All right, let's talk about something you probably use every single day, but never really think about. I'm talking about that simple hole in your wall, the electrical outlet. And what if I told you its history is this absolutely wild story? It's full of clashing titans, wartime shortages, and ideas that got so big they just couldn't be changed. I mean, we've all been there, right? It's one of the most frustrating things about traveling. You pack all your stuff, your chargers, your laptop, and you get to your hotel all excited, and bam, your plugs don't fit the wall. You're stuck with this tangled mess of adapters. So what gives? Why in the world haven't we all just agreed on one simple plug?
Well, because it's not nearly that simple. See, there isn't just one plug, or two, or even three. Nope. There are at least 15 different major types used all over the globe. You've got one for North America, another for most of Europe, a totally different one for the UK. It's a total patchwork. And to understand why it's such a mess, we have to go way, way back, right to the very beginning of electricity.
So to really get why your plug looks the way it does, we can't start with the plug itself. We have to start with the power behind the wall. The very first big split in how we use electricity had nothing to do with the shape of a plug. It was all about the kind of current flowing through the wires. And man, it was a battle fought between two of the biggest names in invention history. Okay, so in one corner, you've got the famous Thomas Edison. He's backing direct current, or DC. And it worked, sure, but it couldn't really travel very far. In the other corner, you have Nikola Tesla with his much more efficient alternating current, or AC. What followed was this nasty PR battle. I mean, Edison went so far as to publicly electrocute animals just to try and scare people away from AC. In the end, though, Tesla's system won out. Why? Because it could send power hundreds of miles, which made it the no-brainer choice for building a power grid. But here's the catch. Even though AC won the war, a huge divide had already been created. Over in the US, the standard that got set was 120 volts at 60 hertz. But in Europe, a big German company basically set the standard at 220 volts at 50 hertz. So think about that. Before the world was even totally wired up, it was already split into two completely incompatible electrical systems. All right, so the power grids are being built out. That's great. But how do you actually get that power and use it in your house? That brings us to the next piece of the puzzle, the invention that turned electricity from this big industrial thing into something you could actually use every day. Because in the early days, there was no such thing as a plug. Can you imagine? If you bought a new appliance, you had to literally wire it directly into your house's power. We're talking live wires just sticking out of the wall. It was a total pain and, you guessed it, incredibly dangerous. If you messed it up, you could start a fire, no problem. So the first solution was, well, it was a pretty clumsy workaround. See, most homes were already wired for lighting, so inventors came up with these funny adapters that you would screw right into a light bulb socket. Yeah, it worked, but it was not great. You literally had to unscrew a light bulb every time you wanted to use your toaster. Not exactly convenient. Then, in 1904, this inventor named Harvey Hubbard has a brilliant idea, a real breakthrough. He patents something called the separable attachment plug. And the concept was genius in its simplicity. One part stays in the wall, right? And the other part, a two-prong plug, is on your appliance. You can just plug it in and unplug it. It was safer, it was way more convenient, and honestly, it completely changed how we all access electricity. So Hubble's big idea was really all about convenience. But as more and more powerful electricity started flooding into people's homes, the next big step had to be about making it safe. And really, two major safety innovations stand out here. First up, in 1928, we get the third prong, the ground prong. Its job is super simple, but absolutely critical. If there's a short circuit, it gives the electricity a safe path to travel into the earth, instead of through you. Then there's the GFCI outlet. You know, the one with the little test and reset buttons you always see in kitchens and bathrooms. That thing is constantly monitoring the electrical current. If it detects even the tiniest imbalance, say the electricity is flowing through water, it snaps the power off in a fraction of a second. It's a literal lifesaver. Okay, so we've got convenience, we've got safety, but we still haven't answered that first big question. With all these great improvements, why on earth do we have so many different plugs? Why didn't the world just pick the best, safest one and stick with it? Well, the answer isn't really about technology. It's about history and money and momentum. The first big idea here is something called technological momentum. The best way I think about it is like a giant cargo ship. Once a massive system, like a country's entire electrical grid, gets built, we're talking billions of dollars in wires in power plants and millions of people trained to use it. It gains so much forward momentum that trying to change its direction is, well, it's almost impossible. The historian David Nye really nailed it with this quote. He said that at first, we shape our technology, but after a while, that technology starts to shape us. It locks us into these paths that were decided on decades, sometimes even a century ago. And a perfect example of this in the real world is the UK's ring circuit. So after World War II, Britain had a massive copper shortage. To save on materials while they were rebuilding, their engineers came up with this really unique wiring system that used a lot less copper. And that's what led to their very distinct kind of chunky type G plug with the built-in fuse. Now, of course, copper isn't scarce today, but that system is so baked into the country's infrastructure that it's still the standard. That, right there, is technological momentum for you. And that's closely related to another big idea called path dependence. It basically says that the road you start on often decides where you finish, even if a much better road is built later on. Those very early choices, the ones made by Edison and Tesla and Hubble and those German engineers, they set the whole world on these different paths. And once you're that far down a path, turning back is just too hard and way too expensive. So what's the big takeaway here? That bag of adapters you hate packing for your trips, it's not just some random modern annoyance. It's actual, physical proof of that war of currents between Edison and Tesla. It's a relic of post-war shortages. It's the result of this powerful historical inertia. Every one of those weirdly shaped plugs tells a story. But, the story of the outlet isn't finished. So what's next? Where does this humble piece of tech go from here? Well, one really cool idea that's been kicked around is called broadband over power lines, or BPL. The idea is to use the electrical wiring that's already in your house to deliver high-speed internet. Can you imagine just plugging your computer into any old wall socket and getting online? Now, it has some technical challenges, for sure, but it just goes to show that this 100-year-old technology might still have a few new tricks up its sleeve. But, of course, this brings up the ultimate question, doesn't it? In a world that's going more and more wireless, with wireless charging, and this dream of truly wireless power beaming through the air, is the physical plug and outlet finally becoming a relic of the past? Could this amazing little invention that literally wired our modern world be reaching the end of its road? It's definitely something to think about the next time you go to plug in your phone.